Hi, Filmatics. Welcome to the show. Today we have a very special guest. We have Frank Lotito. Frank is an award-winning director and producer known for Australian film Big Mama's Boy, U.S. films The Lookalike starring Justin Long and Festival Darling too, Growing Up Smith starring Jason Lee, and so many others. Let's welcome our guest all the way from Australia to the show. Welcome, Frank.
Oh, hello. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Gosh, you do so many things, and so excited to have you recording with me today from Australia.
Yeah, down under. Long way away.
So we just got to talk about this real quick because my mom's probably listening, all the Italians. Um, yes. So your last name's Italian, and you're in Australia. You want to explain a little bit?
Yeah, I'm first generation. So my parents immigrated here just before I was born, so back in the late 60s. And I was born in Melbourne, Australia. So, I'm predominantly Italian because my parents, are still traditional and they hold on to their culture very much. So,
Oh,
you know,
my
I'm more
nice.
Italian than I am Australian.
Oh, do you speak any Italian at all?
I do. I speak fluent. I also speak the Sicilian dialect as well because my mother's from Sicily.
Oh, wow. Well, welcome to the show. My gosh. So you're in Australia, came from Italy, and when you were growing up, well, so when you went to Australia, was there that big film that you saw growing up as a little kid that said, "Oh my gosh, I love this film"?
Oh, it wasn't so much a film, but I remember my earliest memory as a kid was my parents taking me to the movies, and we had a little theater where we lived in the predominantly Italian suburb, and the theater was called the Metropolitan, and they at the time they only showed Italian movies, and so I remember seeing Sophia Loren and Marcello Mastroianni in these movies, and even until I was a teenager, I didn't quite understand that the Ten Commandments was an American film because I watched it as a kid, dubbed in Italian at the Italian theater. So, that kind of, I was in awe of what was going on screen as a kid. I didn't know why. And then when I saw the film Cinema Paradiso, that kind of did it for me because I was that little kid, that was obsessed with films and movies and the theater and the cinema. So yeah, I'd have to say Cinema Paradiso was one that kind of did it for me, really.
Oh yeah, and that's a great Criterion film as well. Yeah, that is
Beautiful, yeah.
such a special film. I did a tribute short to Cinema Paradiso using like puppets, and it did really well in festivals and stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful.
So you're this kid watching Italian movies in Australia. So you're in Australia and you're
Yeah,
still watching
crazy.
Italian movies. I love that. Didn't even know.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, because the neighborhood was predominantly Italian. When the Italians immigrated here, they all went to a place called Brunswick, and the you'd go to the store or the fruit shop or the deli, and they were all Italians. Everyone spoke Italian. My parents, they learnt English, but they really didn't have to. My grandparents, up until the day they passed, they still couldn't speak English very well because they were so comfortable in their neighborhood.
Oh yeah, what was the name of this neighborhood? Because our Wi-Fi, all the way from Australia, might have went out a little bit. What's the name of the Australian neighborhood that's Italian?
So say again.
What's the name of that neighborhood?
It's called Brunswick.
Oh, Brunswick, Australia. So I had
Yeah.
no idea. In New York, we know Little Italy, and I don't even know if there's an Italian section in Los Angeles. I know there's like every other kind of like culture, little cute place
Sure.
to
Yeah.
visit. Like everyone goes to Chinatown when you come to LA. I mean, come on, that's the most famous film,
Yeah. No,
Chinatown
there's
as
no
well.
Little Italy.
Yeah.
But the neighborhood was very much like Little Italy or the Bronx or Brooklyn in New York. So yeah, it's very much like that.
Okay, yeah. So So how did you get involved in producing and directing? So did you go to high school? Were you actor at all?
Yeah, look, I started off as an actor, but I got into it by accident. To be honest, I was my family had a restaurant in that neighborhood, and I was working in my family restaurant, going to uni at the same time to college, and I was one of those you know kind of wannabe comedian maitre d's, and I would make people laugh as they come into the restaurant, and sometimes I'd pretend I was a different character. There was this character I played as the maitre d, an Italian who couldn't speak English, and mainly to impress the girls, But a producer came in once and who was doing a stage show, and he caught me out. But he said, you're a very good actor. Have you ever done it before? And I'm like, yeah, I act all the time, which I never did. But he said, look, I'm doing a stage show. Do you want to come? And I think you'd be great for one of the roles. Do you want to come and audition? I didn't know what an audition was. And I said, okay, no worries. So I did, and I got the part. And so we rehearsed this show. It was a 15th century play by Molière called The Miser, and I played the miser's son. And we did the rehearsals, which was great. And then come opening night, I panicked and I had stage fright, and I wasn't feeling very good. So I wasn't sure if I was going to go out on stage or not. And this is a true story. I was backstage. The show had started. I was feeling sick, but someone started calling out my name and said, Frank, fire. And I looked out on stage, and the curtains had caught fire.
Oh, wow.
And so I got the closest fire extinguisher, ran out on stage and put the fire and put out the fire. And then the audience started clapping and cheering. And I thought, oh, wow, this feels good. I think I could do this. So we started the show again. I came out. We did the show. It was great. And then the next day I was in the paper, and it was local kid not only saves the theatre, but he was a standout performance. And so that's where, I kind of started. From there, I got another stage show, and then I started acting, got an agent, and did some TV and film. But as an actor working on film and television, I realized I was more interested in what was going on behind the scenes than in front of the camera. And so other actors would go off in between takes and read books. I'd go off into the on set and talk to the gaffer and the grip and the DP and find out who was doing what and why was this, and asking a lot of questions and trying to help out. So that's how I learned my craft as a producer and director, and it kind of happened from there, really.
I love that. Like, so your parents have this restaurant, and and the first acting role is like, I don't know if anyone knows Moliere. That's like starting with Shakespeare. You weren't starting with something easy. You started with something very serious. Very, very serious. And the fact that you did it and you saved the theater from fire, like you did a double hard thing to do. And so wow.
All I knew was that my character, I had no idea what I was saying, but my character was supposed to be funny. So I put in as much slapstick comedy as I could, which really worked, and it kind of stood out. So,
Yeah, so you really like comedy. So was that like you were just doing comedy for fun, but so you started Can you want to share some acting roles on TV that you did, like some funny stories on set?
Look, they weren't very big. I did a lot of guest roles on TV shows, local shows like Neighbours, and at the time shows like Stingers, and they were kind of shows that really didn't transcend overseas, but they were popular in Australia. Although Neighbours was popular in the UK at the time, and those shows spawned a lot of big actors like Russell Crowe and Chris Hemsworth. They were breeding grounds for those Aussie iconic actors that are doing very well. I did star in a movie called Big Mama's Boy, which I also wrote and produced. Only because while I was doing that, at the same time, I was doing stage comedy, but I also kind of went into stand-up comedy. I'm sort of one of those guys that, I have to challenge myself and I have to do something different. And I thought, I want to try stand-up comedy. So I ended up writing a 1-hour show and booking a theatre and went off and did a comedy show that did really well. And so from that, I had someone come to see that and said, hey, you should kind of write a film based on your comedy, which I did, and it became Big Mama's Boy. And that was really the start of my film career as a producer, as a writer-producer, which then I went into directing. And I feel like I'm a much better director going through that process, being an actor and doing that transition into producing, and then it's a gradual progression into directing, which I feel like, from feedback from other actors, I know how to work with actors because I've been there as well. So I think it's for a reason.
Yeah, well, Neighbors, you were to get a guest star role on a TV show in USA. It's so competitive. If you don't have it, if you don't have like 20 or 30 co-star credits, they won't even look at you to be a guest star unless you have a name. But then they started then they started giving like people that didn't have any. They needed people to fill certain roles, so they were just going I guess people got like like, okay, you might not have it, but we're looking for these type of people to fit in that, so you can. So a lot of people just got like the golden ticket to get a guest star, and you're like, oh my gosh, but a lot of people, if you didn't have a lot of co-stars, they went. So guest stars really big and important in USA TV because it's like they won't even let you go do that unless you have a lot of co-stars. Like I said, unless you fit some kind of role that they didn't have a lot of people of, and then you get more luckier if they needed something very specific, that because there's so many people to pick from in USA. There's got millions and millions and millions. You want what do you want? Yellow, red, blue, purple. We've got everything to compete with, And
no, the industry is much smaller here in Australia, so we're, I guess in a way, and we have international movies and TV shows filming here as well. So it's quite a busy and vibrant industry at the moment.
So I love that. So you're on set. You're like me on set. I'm like, oh, I want to go see what the director's doing, and I'm very inquisitive because I wanted to be a director, and I became top 50 director in Project Greenlight, so that's not too shabby, and top five comedy director for CBS contest called Big Shot Live, and then but the thing is, I did mine with no budgets, and then it's very hard to do without a budget, and to get a new team, a cast and a crew every time to find their DP and the editor and to ask them to do it with no money. And it's so I was just like, oh my gosh, podcast is better. I don't have to worry about too much except for praying the sound on Wi-Fi comes clear. Yeah, so
filmmaking is definitely not for the faint-hearted. It's quite a hard process, to try and get a film off the ground, and I think it's much harder these days as well, with everything that's going on, streaming and TV.
Well, they need good content, so I hope that they will hear some of my guests and including myself on the podcast to find great content, because great content is key. And so, if you find great content, you're going to get the investors because investors will like it. And you can always put a producer and director and get the actors on once there's money. So great content is key. But where I'm at, they want pedigree, which means the content has to have 1 million followers. So please follow me on TikTok and Instagram, everyone. Maryland Artist. You can help me get those followers to get that deal and help. Well, Frank probably already has all those followers, but so sometimes it's
not really.
So follow both of us, please. Yeah. And then so you were testing out some comedy, and what was the name of your comedy that led to your film Big Mama's Boy with starring Justin Long, right? So what was the act? What was the routine? Can you tell us a couple jokes or anything?
Well, no. Basically, it was just telling stories about my upbringing. Living in a predominantly Italian neighborhood and being brought up by Italian parents. Because my parents were quite old school, keeping those sort of cultural traditions from the old country didn't make it easy for us growing up in Australia. So, it really is an immigrant's story. And, my stand-up was just that, telling stories about my upbringing and dealing with my family and my parents. So, and that's it. I think it was a story about a boy, is a 35-year-old man still living at home with his mother. She's this kind of overbearing, neurotic food mother.
Yes,
So,
yes, we know
it's
that,
hard
the
to
food mother.
leave. Yeah. And other cultures can relate to that, because the Jewish mother is the same. That kind of neurotic, overbearing mother. So other cultures were very much kind of attracted to that story. So it crosses cultures.
And
So it's
now
very popular.
and now during COVID, a lot of people became mama's boys at 35 and over, because a lot of people moved back home with their parents, and a lot of
Oh yeah.
people are living with their parents and families, and especially with, like, right now the hurricane in Florida just happened. I mean, praying for everyone over there. My family is on the East
Yes,
Coast, and we
terrible.
usually get it on the East Coast of Florida. I've had to evacuate many hurricanes, but this one was bad flooding, and it's a big
Terrible,
boy.
terrible.
It's a big boy hurricane. So just sending out our hearts and prayers to everyone there. But so yeah, so Big Mama's Boy, a lot of people can relate to that, like living at home with this overbearing mom or dad, and especially if you have the Italians, manja,
Yeah,
manja, manja, right?
yeah, that's right.
How many
That's
courses
right.
did y'all have at dinner?
It's always like 6 courses. It's ridiculous, and there's always too much food. And we're always taking leftovers home with us. So
Yeah.
yeah.
What they did own a restaurant. You said, what was the name of the restaurant? Are we allowed to share?
The restaurant, it was a long time ago. It's 25 years now. It was called Punto di Vista, point of view. So
Oh,
it's an Italian restaurant. Yeah,
Puerto
yeah,
Vista. And you know what? You have to have a point of view as a writer and a director, even an
correct.
actor, a storyteller. So that's amazing. So did you have a director that a director that you like, that you kind of,
Oh
looked
yeah.
at? Who are some of your favorites?
Well, look, I really gravitated, you know, towards sort of those Italian American directors like Francis Ford Coppola, Martin Scorsese. But then, as I was sort of getting into the film business, I really kind of loved the playfulness of Steven Spielberg and Ron Howard. Those sort of directors that are kind of commercial in a way, but also know how to tell great stories. And especially, I gravitated towards Spielberg and Howard because of their feel-good sort of approach to making films, and they're the kind of films that I want to make. Even though I'm a big fan of Martin Scorsese films or Tarantino films, like a lot of people, but I really kind of gravitate towards that feel-good. Even obscure like Wes Anderson or this type of quirky filmmakers as well.
So you do this comedy show, and then you wrote Big Mama's Boy. So how did you start going about producing it, and you directed that as well, right? How did you
No, I didn't direct Big Mama's Boy, but I did produce it, and
so
that was kind of like the start. Look, I was very lucky because of the comedy. It attracted a few people with money that were willing to back me and the film. So we raised some equity, and along with, we have really good incentives in Australia. That really helped. So look, it was a very small budget.
so it's made on a very small budget, and you attracted some equity to it,
Which
and
is, I guess a decent, but not a lot of money to make a film like that.
but
Yeah,
so how did you
correct.
get Justin
Um,
Long? So
so
how did you get your actor?
So no, Justin Long was the movie afterward. We got Justin Long in a US film called The Lookalike. And so what happened was, after Big Mama's Boy came out, we had a screening in the US, in LA, and invited a few people. And that kind of, people were very impressed with the film, not only the popularity of the film, but also that we were able to make something like that for $1 million for a low budget. So I got together with a director named Richard Gray, who was also Australian, and him and his wife had written this script called The Lookalike, which we started shopping around. So I was attached as a producer. And then one thing led to another. As you know, in LA, it's all about meeting people and timing and all that sort of stuff. So I think we had met Justin Long's manager, and we got him the script, and he sent it to Justin Long. He really liked it. And then it kind of went on from there, even though the budget was quite small. It was under $2 million. And he got the script to John Corbett, who agreed to do it. And we had
That's amazing. It sounds like your path to producing and directing and acting just kind of like magically, like literally went up the chain.
Yeah, we shot in New Orleans, which was an amazing experience. And it kind of just went from there. And so, from that we produced a couple of other films, and then I decided to try my hand at directing. I directed a few short films and video clips and TV ads in Australia, but then I came across this script called Growing Up Smith, which was written by Gregory Scott Houghton and Anjul Nigam. Anjul Nigam, who also plays the father in that film, and was one of the producers as well. And we met a producer by the name of Steve Straka, and we again found some money, and we shopped it around and ended up casting Jason Lee in one of the roles, and that kind of triggered the finance. As you know, you kind of need that kind of A-list actor, and Jason Lee was that. And I directed that film, and I really loved that experience, and everyone, the cast through, were amazing, and we shot in upstate New York. There, it was wonderful. So that was it for me. I got bit on the butt by the directing bug, and that's where I want to be.
So Growing Up Smith starring Jason Lee. So that's your director. That's your first director credit with Jason Lee. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
And then you
it
also
was amazing.
Yeah, you also did the third installment of Australian box office hit, The Wog Boys Forever.
Yeah, well, that's about to come out. Actually, we just had the premiere of. So the Wog Boy, the word wog is probably not known in the US, but it's like it's like the word dago. It's kind of that the Americans used to use back in the day. So it's very derogative kind of name, but Nick, who sort of came up with the first movie, kind of turned it on his head and saw the comedy in it, and it became a runaway hit in Australia. And so this is the third installment. It has a very loyal audience. We had the premiere here at the theatre with 3,000 people. It was amazing. And so it's releasing in cinemas across Australia on October 6th. So I think it will do really well. It's a feel-good movie. It's funny. And audiences are hanging out for it.
Oh wow! So you got this Wog fan base, like Wog's Lady Gaga's got Little Monsters, and you got Wog Boys.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's nice. And I got Swiggles. I write children's stories, so I've got a lot of Swiggles and Swiggles and Scribbly Wibblies. But
Yeah, right.
yeah, I love the fact that you're doing comedy, because people don't want to do comedy anymore. It's like they think it's risky, but Big Mama's Boy is like hilarious. I like that you do these feel good, kind of like a Frank Capra style almost. Like you bring these
Yeah,
feel good films, because we need comedy, but people are scared of
Absolutely.
comedy, and so I'm really glad that you're bringing comedy and I'm glad that like you finding your passion, which is directing and producing, because we need great directors and storytellers, and people from all over the world. Like we need some new Italian blood in there. So right, because like our Italian directors are like, oh my God, everyone says Scorsese, but I'm like, I mean, he's been around for a while, and then there's Tarantino, but we need some new, fresh, new, fresh. I'm representing the podcast world as Italian and with film addicts and enchanting book readings and Girls Guide to Investing. I'm doing my part, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah. So where can they see your stuff that's coming up? Like where can they find it on? Is it streaming at the streamers?
Yeah, I think Growing Up Smith is available on iTunes and other streaming sort of VOD and streaming networks. I think it was uh, on Showtime as well. So it's available in the US and in other countries. It was number 5 on Netflix in India. It did really well.
Oh, really nice.
Well. Top 5, yeah. So Wog Boy is not available on streaming until after the release, obviously, but that's on Paramount Plus in a few months. So.
Yeah, and would like to talk your Growing Up Smith also premiered at the Seattle International Film Festival and won numerous awards, including winner jury award for best family feature. Oh my gosh, and for best Seattle International Film Festival, and also nominated Time Magazine's Movie of the Week. Congratulations for making high quality family films. And you're also you're writing and developing another project that you're going to be directing, which is a romantic comedy called Unexpectedly Milo, written by somebody else this time, right? Mark Andrus, who wrote As Good as It Gets.
Yeah, it's look, I love reading scripts. I get scripts sent to me all the time, but I kind of always gravitate to these comedies. I was offered to do a horror, but I just didn't want to go down that path. It's not my thing. So I tend to want to do something that's kind of lighthearted and inspiring somewhat and motivating. I think that we need more films about love, passion, and hope. So yeah, I think that's my thing. Hopefully, I can do more.
Oh wow! I mean, that's just amazing. Like, and where can they see Big Mama's Boy?
Again, I think that's on iTunes as well, available. In Australia, it's probably available in other platforms, but I'm pretty sure only in the US it's only on iTunes.
Wow. So just you've got so many things. Originally an actor comedian from Melbourne, Australia, who you are now writing, directing, producing for over 20 years. It doesn't, I mean, wow. From the Lookalike, starting with Justin Long and Jerry O'Connell. So I hope everyone checks out the Lookalike. I mean, it's so funny, and I bet you everyone's gonna go. I want to check out, Mama's Boy, because that is just so relevant to today. And I'm excited for them to check out Unexpectedly Milo, your new film, and obviously the box office smash hit, the Wog Boy movie franchise. That's amazing. So I just wanted to say I really appreciate you come on the show today. Just enjoying to get to know you and loving that you're an Italian and Australian and you're a director and producer. You are living the dream.
I'd love to think so. Thank you so much for having me, Marilyn. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And if everyone would like to give the podcast a download, that will help us. If you'd like to, sponsor us, PayPal anonymous content, and give us a nice 5-star review, but download the podcast and share it with your friends and enjoy all the great podcasts we have with top writer, directors, producers, actors, and all these award-winning fabulous people like Frank Lotito. Thank you so much, Frank, for being on the show today.
Cheers. Bye-bye.